I am Blaze Bailey. You are experiencing probably the best show in the world, Poppitt's Corner.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner. This is unbelievable right here. So, obviously, we are broadcasting live out of the San Diego Metal Swap Meet right now, and we have pretty much the headliner of this event, Mr. Gene Hoglan. Gene, how you doing, man? Thanks again for giving us a couple minutes of your time.
Absolutely, Tanner. I'm happy to be here, man. I'm doing great. Hopefully, everybody's having a good time today. It's been a tradition for many years, this old San Diego Metal Swap Meet, so we're having a great time.
Now, what you did today was kind of unique, I would say, because you were playing, obviously, your whole career on stage and telling stories and whatnot. Now, is this the first time you've actually done something like this?
No, I've done this lots of times, actually, and this is actually the shortest set that I've ever done. Doing it in this kind of manner, because this is essentially, it's kind of the same way I do clinics. Usually the clinics have more talking, so this was just concentrate on the music, gab a little bit in between the transitions from bands to band kind of thing. And so, yeah, man, I got a snappier set, just short hour-long set. So it was pretty darn fun.
Now, how much exercise do you have to do when doing something of this caliber compared to a 2-hour, 3-hour live show? Is it just you get on stage and it just wings it? You wing it, or you still...
Well, for something like this, I started rehearsing last week for it because I just finished tracking the new Death Clock album, and so once that was done, I got back here to San Diego, and then I just went and I put together a set list, just a playlist off Spotify, and there are some of these songs I don't play regularly, so there's a couple of things I had to remember, drum licks and drum fills, and I just figured, man, if you blow something, who cares? So there you go.
And when choosing the songs and whatnot, did you just pick your specific favorite that you wanted to play, or did you kind of want to showcase more of like the songs that don't get appreciated as much from your specific career?
Well, it was more, I tried to give a little bit of a blend of, give the people what they want. Make sure you play a few popular songs or whatever, or ones that sometimes drummers have always pointed out, like, hey, that song Zero Tolerance by Death, that's got some interesting things to it. I'd love to see that ever, close up kind of thing. So I tried to just kind of run the gamut of songs that people, general metal folks that aren't musicians, just they want to hear those songs. And those who are musicians, try to showcase a couple of the songs that seem to resonate with the more musicianary type folks out there, and just try to have some fun. All of these songs are fun to play. Like, for instance, Shitstorm by Strapping. That came off our, we only toured very briefly after that. We threw that one in the live set, but it's been since 2005 since I've ever played that song. So there you go. So we just I had some fun with the set list.
Now, in your specific career, you're more kind of all over the place in terms of the bands that you choose to play, the stylistically wise. Now, I'm curious, is there a specific style that you have not yet played that you would like to record a record? Like, is it, I don't know, a hard rock kind of band? Is it a synth new wave pop band? Is there a specific style you've never done that you've always wanted to do?
I tell you, I would love to play some, like, sweaty, greasy funk. Some old school, just where you're just in the pocket and just laying off just kick-ass licks and cool shuffles, even that kind of thing. So that would be awesome, because when it comes to metal, I've kind of run the gamut of it, and I would not still be playing metal if I didn't enjoy it as much as I do. I love playing metal, so it's really fun, and that's why I have tried to bring outside elements to keep it interesting for myself. If I was just kind of playing the same old kind of Dark Angel approach or something, maybe I would feel like I'm getting pretty stale. But since I have kind of run the gamut, with Dark Angel, just savage music. Death, a little more complicated, a little more technical. You get to stretch out your chops a little bit. Strapping got to be really intense, and blast beats and hauling double bass and psychosis. And just it kind of runs the gamut. So I've been fortunate that I've been able to keep myself very engaged in playing the old catalog, because there's always something interesting. A song like Skeksis by Strapping, I don't think anybody's ever done a song like Skeksis, so it's like, that's a really fun song to play.
Now, you brought up Dark Angel, and I know you primarily wrote a lot for Dark Angel and performed it. Do you like that specific creativity in playing in a band, or do you just like to kind of go into a band and just play with what they've written and put your own spin on things?
It does run the gamut. There are some projects that I do in some bands where they're pretty involved in the drum arrangements. Like they know what they want. So I'm always happy to accommodate. Like for instance, like with Testament, Mr. Eric Peterson, he's got a pretty good vision of what he wants to get accomplished, get across, and there's been times when I'm like, are you sure you want that approach, Eric? Because I've got something from my brain. I am a drummer, and he's like, I want this approach. So sometimes you take a step back and you want to give. I always want to give whoever's writing the song, I want them to have their vision achieved. So that's why I would rather have their happiness than me putting my stamp on some song. It's like, hey man, if this is what you want, then I'm happy to be the guy for you.
How often though, when you put on your piece, if they want to hear what you want to add to it, do they say, you know what, I like that better, and then they add that?
A lot of times, yes. Like, say, for instance, like Brendan Small from Death Clock. He always, when he gives me songs, there's a template, but he's like, dude, you do your thing to this.
That's great.
Like, here's kind of the kick pattern I'd like to hear, and the snares in the spot I want. But as for it is a basic template, so it does run the gamut. Some people are very, I guess, anal or something. They're just very, they've got their vision in their head of, they hear the song in its completed form, and that before it's even tracked, and that's how they want to hear it. So fine, that's great. And other people, like, I'm into letting this song take a journey in the studio, and let's see what we come up with. You're always going to come up with something better than me because I'm not a drummer, kind of thing. I can program drums. A lot of people tell me that. So it gives me the best of both worlds, and so I'm pretty darn stoked.
Now, you mentioned funk earlier. That I'm just generally curious. Was that the style of music that you had grown up with? Like, what were some of the bands that you particularly were starting out, kind of hearing for the first time, just as a young kid?
Well, as a child, boy, I was all over American pop radio from 1969 through 76. Kind of up until about the disco era. I loved AM pop radio. That was amazing, and that was one thing, since you had live drummers on stuff like that. You got a song like, I don't know, All By Myself by Eric Carmen. It's got a great drum break in the middle of it that, you don't hear anymore. Because nowadays it's like, just do as little as possible, Mr. Session Drummer, or we have him programmed, that kind of thing. So back then you got to show a little bit of creativity. You got a guy like Steve Miller. I mean, he's a guitarist, but they were so drum driven, the Steve Miller band. There's an example, So, I grew up with the American pop radio, and then that kind of evolved into what I guess is now classic rock. All the bands from the 70s, from Aerosmith to Cheap Trick, Kiss, Black Sabbath, Queen, Pat Travers, all that kind of stuff. I was super into all of that as well. So I've always tried to bring. I'm fortunate that I've got a pretty wide musical taste, and I am all about, like, bringing in some of the 70s influence or bringing in some of the non-metal influence. I loved Motown growing up, still to this day. Bring some Motown influence if you can get away with it, and usually you can.
So that's your foundation, essentially.
All of that,
stuff.
yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Do you have a drum question for Mr. Gene Hoglan? He's just listening. All right.
So who was what made you pick up the drum, the sticks, and say, this is what I want to do?
Animal from the Muppets. Holy moly, who didn't want to be a drummer when you see old Animal, man? But no, I was just, I remember when I was, I guess, maybe like 7 years old, second grade, I used to just sit at my desk and just, tap on my desk all the time. And I think probably when I was about 7 was when it started kind of hitting. So I became an air drummer at about age 8. And that's how I taught myself how to play drums, by air drumming, play along with all your favorite songs. And I was actually trying to teach myself the drums, like say you got to, I'd start off with Peter Criss from Kiss, big influence, on the very nascent Gene. And then, started building into guys like, Neil Peart, of course, Tommy Aldridge, and I would listen to their music and I would play air drums along to it. And I'm like, you're actually, like with the Neil Peart song, you're actually, you can hear what he's playing with his hands. You can hear what he's playing with his kick drum. You're giving yourself a lesson with each song that you drum along with, because you're just absorbing all that information that is being thrown at you by this musician that you look up to, and it all becomes part of the sponge that grows yourself totally.
Now let's venture into this territory here, where, for a big part of your initial career at the start, you had never played to a click before. And again, if I'm wrong, correct me, please. But I believe you hadn't played to a click until you had started jamming with Devin Townsend.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's obvious too. It's painfully obvious, man. Holy moly, God.
I'm generally curious though, what playing to the click taught you at first, when you first kind of went into the studio and said, "Holy fuck, how am I gonna do this?"
Was it natural?
Well,
yeah, and was it natural?
yes, it was very natural. I was surprised for that, because I've had friends in bands, big bands, good friends, where their first time having to use the click, they turned into just a crying puddle of goo. They just could not pull it off. And so with that in mind, I was like, I've never played to a click before. I remember it was like Devin, we had done for the City album, we did a total of 4 rehearsals for it, and those were spread out over about 4 or 5 months kind of thing, a couple of rehearsals here, a rehearsal here, a rehearsal there kind of thing. That was it. And when Devin mentioned, hey man, I'd like a few of these songs to be to the click, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, let's figure it out. I wrote some tunes, went in the studio with a click track, and I was like, oh, holy moly, I'm okay at the click track. Thank God. So it was fine. So yeah, I love playing with the click. If there is no click, that's fine too. I'm pretty solid meter. But I mean, there was a song in the set today. What's it called? It was it's Crystal Mountain or Zero Tolerance.
Yep.
There's I'm doing some kind of snare pattern, playing the hi-hat, and coming back to rehearse to this song, I'm like, God, your meter's terrible. It just starts at this tempo and then it starts ramping up, and I'm just like, oh God, I had to, it took a while to get your meter together. I hear it all over
Only
the place.
Gene would notice that, though.
Oh, that's painfully obvious now.
Now let's go back to the Dark Angel period of your specific career and what you're doing now with them, because there's been kind of some news, but kind of not some news. So I'm curious what's going on in the Dark Angel camp.
Well, so far, we've been playing a lot of live shows, and we tend to play kind of festivals because that just kind of works out the best. We're writing the next album, and I've been concentrating on writing that, and Jim Durkin is also writing. At the moment, Jim, he's had to take a little bit of time off from some live shows, but that was always kind of built into our system, because when we got ourselves back together, he's like, hey guys, just so you know, there's going to be sometimes somewhere in the future where I might not be able to make certain shows, or there could be an entire run that I might not be able to make. So, as long as you guys are cool moving forward with it. And we were able to get a good 8 years with Jim, at least. And, so there you go. And, we're just writing, and we're just trying to make it the most aggressive Dark Angel music that we can make,
Will this be the first with a click, or are you doing it without it, just like all the first 4?
That is a good question. I haven't considered that yet. I would imagine I probably would use a click for it, but it's not mandated by any means, because this is old school visceral thrash metal. It didn't. Back then there were no rules. Just like did you know that when you come into the second verse, it's faster than the first verse? It's like, no, I didn't know that, but there were no rules. So just play vicious and fast and aggressive and from your heart. And that's the way to do it.
And I love that you still have Ron Reinhardt on vocals.
That's
and
right.
Just,
Yeah, man, he's crushing.
So
to me, he's my favorite of the Dark Angel.
Me too. I tell you, absolutely. Ron's great, and over the years he has developed this like timbre to his voice. Where his voice has gotten even lower and richer and more rumbling. So that's pretty darn cool too. I'm definitely going to utilize that.
But he's always had this singing style underneath the raspiness,
absolutely,
which makes it so unique to thrash metal.
Darn tootin'. Yeah, man, and that's just since we are old school. OGers, there were no rules. That's why when Ron came into the fold, I couldn't put rules onto it and say, you got to sound just like the last guy. Or, I was just like, Ron, be yourself. I'll write for you.
Now, was there a kind of like a bone of contention when it came to, I guess, pressure when getting Ron initially into Dark Angel at first?
Well, no, we were really happy to have him. He was pretty instant because we had gone through about 10 months of rehearsing. Some talented guys, some good guys, but we were like, they're all, any one of these guys that we've jammed with, they could do the job. It could be all right. It won't be bad or anything. But then when Ron came around, it was like, yes, like
awesome.
Instantly. So we're like,
great.
yay, yahoo, darn tootin'.
I love it.
So this next album, I think it was Time Does Not Heal. It might have been Leave Scars. There was a sticker on the tape, on the cassette that it came with. And it was like, this contains 56 riffs in a song.
Oh, yeah, 246 riffs.
Yeah, are you trying to beat that this time?
God, Lord Almighty, no. No, not at all, man. That was just how that turned out was, when you're figuring out the publishing, and I wanted to make sure that whoever wrote the majority of the song got their name first in the like credits on the record. That's why you would see Erickson Hoglan on some of the songs, and sometimes it's Hoglan Erickson. But I just wanted to make sure, I just want to be fair.
That's cool.
And so I was like, well, I guess you're gonna have to count up the riffs. This one's, I had a little chart. This one's Brett, this one's me. These 4 are Brett, and this one's me. And I just kind of went like that. And when we had tracked the record and it was all done, turned it into the record label, I got a call from one of the record label guys, and he was like, God dang, there's a whole lot of riffs on this record. And I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, there's 246 of those things. And then months later, we see it on the poster,
Sticker, that's so
9
great.
songs, 67 minutes, 246 riffs. I was like,
That's great.
are you kidding me?
Best promo ever for a record.
That's pretty fun, man.
Gene, I want to thank you again for giving us a couple minutes
Right
of your
on,
time.
Tanner. My pleasure, man.
To
Very
do this
cool.
with us, and I look forward to many, 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 many more of your albums coming out.
Excellent.
Where can people find and support anything Gene Hoglan now?
Well, let's see here. I am, you can find me through, you can type up genehoglan.com, Hoglan Industries, or Reversed Records. That's my management. And, we got the merch store through Reversed Records. And I also, during the pandemic, I started becoming a live Twitch streamer. And I haven't been able to concentrate on that as much since now it's just 0 to 1,000 of miles per hour of life. So, but I want to come back to doing some odd streams, getting some streams in and have fun because we have a really good time with them. And so there you go. But yeah, man, just pay attention to all the socials, and I'll always try to keep everybody updated on what's been happening, what's going on.
I appreciate it. Well, Gene, thanks very much
Thank
again
you.
for,
Right on,
for
Tanner.
coming
My
on
pleasure.
the show. I appreciate it. So.
Very cool, man.
Another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys. We're out of here. Cheers.